Hi, Bunny. I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of ghost buns, and welcome back to the Disney debates. It's time for us to do part 2 of our top 14 Disney films of 2022. We're back. I'm sick. You may notice that my voice is a little bit scraggly because Doug got me sick. I don't know how, but I got what he got. And but we are joined once again by Kat McBarry.
Hello. Nice to see you all again. I now sound like I'm much closer to the mic. Apologies for the quality from last time, but we're better now, so you can properly hear me rage the way you were meant to hear it.
Yeah, technology sucks, and when we test everything before we record, it's just when we started a new thing, it just defaulted to a different microphone for some reason. We don't know why.
Yay, technology.
And how's it going, Doog?
I did not make you sick. It's your own fault for leaving your folds of fat all over the country and not washing them.
I wash every day, twice a day. How dare you? How dare you, sir?
Then why is there
fired.
a hot dog in your folds, huh?
It's for safekeeping. In any case, we are here for the second half of the top 14 films of 2022. Last time we talked about some bad stuff, a lot of bad stuff, and we talked about some good stuff. It's a bit of a mixed bag today too, but the first one that we're actually talking about today is pretty good. We're talking about Rise, which I had not heard anything about this film. But this is a sports film, which I was like, okay, sometimes they can be good. I like the Mighty Ducks, we'll see how that goes. But the thing with Rise is that it's based on a true story, and it's about it really deals with the family of someone who, is trying to climb out of poverty and try to escape from a bad situation. Kat, do you want to give a brief summary before we give our rankings?
So, just to start off with, I am terrible at pronouncing names, as I'm sure you've heard me say before, both in our videos and videos with Zen. So, apologies if I mispronounce a lot of people's names in this. I'm just going to default to Zen, who's better at doing it than me. But yeah, I can at least tell you the synopsis. So Rise is about the background of a basketball player, actually 3 brothers who are basketball players. Primarily the one brother, his name is Zen. Why don't you take it away?
It's Giannis Adetokounmpo.
Yeah.
I believe I'm saying that right. There's a lot of Greek letters, and it's the real name is based on a Nigerian word that means the king has come from over the ocean, I believe.
Yeah, I believe that's what they said the translation was. But yeah, believe it or not, even though this is a sports story, it doesn't really focus on sports that much. If anything, it focuses more on this family and their attempt to try to make a life for themselves, despite the fact that they are essentially illegal immigrants. We follow the family as they escape from Kenya over to Greece, how they're trying to get established, trying to gain their citizenship, but they keep being denied left and right because of, red tape and whatever. Basically, the system is designed to to specifically prevent them from gaining citizenship. But then they discover there is a way they can do so, and it's through their sons playing basketball. Because they discover that if they manage to make it into the big leagues, they actually could get, paying jobs, which would consider them citizens. So basically the whole thing, we're just following the brothers, their family, and them just trying to, basically get better at basketball to the point where they make it into the pros. And this is a real life person, him and his brothers. He was on the Milwaukee Bucks. He's been on another team. They've been on other teams. They believe he's won MVP. So he definitely is legit. And I think this was a very apropos story at this point in time. Considering all the issues with immigrants, specifically in this country. So to see this family that, yes, they are illegal immigrants who crossed over illegally, but they are trying to get get citizenship through legit means. It's just that, the system is actively trying to stop them. So this is literally like their only course of action. So I think they definitely had a message to convey by picking out this particular person's story to tell.
So personally, I had this at number 4.
Number 6.
Sorry. I had this at number 4 also.
I was actually really surprised by this. I hadn't seen any advertising, and I think that's a problem of Disney Plus and streaming in general, because, like, I never saw any advertising for Stranger Things Season 2, but everyone was talking about it. But, like, Rise is a really good movie, and outside of, like, seeing it when you open up the Disney Plus app, like, there's a little panel, there really wasn't any advertising for this anywhere, but this deserved to be in theaters, honestly. This was a very powerful, very engaging story about a family who are trying to make ends meet. And the only reason why they are trying to immigrate from Kenya is because, well, there's not a lot for them there, so they go through Greece, but, they keep getting, the threat of deportation, and it's like, we just want to be citizens. We want to do stuff. Like, their father is constantly taking odd jobs to make ends meet, and he's a really good father, and it's like, it's a powerful story of how, like, people just have this perception that because you're an immigrant, you're not contributing to society, and yet they are. And it's just like, this is pushing against the stigma that not just in Greece but America that we have, that a lot of people are very anti-immigrant, and I'm just like, look, I'm Irish. We immigrated here. Like, we contribute to society. It's just like, we just wanted a better life, and that, by the end of the day, like, there's this story about the struggle and how they finally make it work despite the odds. It's a very powerful story.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I kind of like. I know they had to make this a sports movie because, like, honestly, Disney kind of puts out, like, one sports film a year. Like, they just go around and choose whatever. I felt, again, this was a good story to tell, and I like the family. They're rather charming, and you really, like, sympathize with them, like, how hard they're trying to work. I did feel really bad for them, like, having to leave behind their eldest son, though, just because it was too dangerous to take him with them, and essentially he grows up separate from their brothers. But not to mention, the fact that they can only get that really small, like, home to live in, where essentially all, like, 4 brothers have to share one bed. Like, that's rough, buddy. Really rough.
Yeah, it's like, it's a very rough life, and they go through a lot, and just the struggle that they take throughout the film is just very interesting. Doug, what are your thoughts?
This gave me safety vibes. Um, from a couple years ago. Um, at least though with this one, I feel like despite the fact that the sports isn't really shown that much in the film, it's definitely more focused on than it was in safety. Um, and what you call it? The guy that they're focusing on, Giannis, he is still in the league. He is still playing. And yeah, it's nice that his brothers made it. Um, what you call it? It is frustrating to watch, given like they said, like Kat said, they left the eldest brother back in Africa for some reason, and then have a whole bunch of new kids. Um, so it's like, I know you want desperately to be, citizens, but it feels like you were a little premature in this. But what can I say? I can't really speak for these people. I haven't had the hard life that they've had, so I'm not one to criticize. Um, but yeah, it is. Otherwise it's pretty much a sports movie. I did enjoy watching them, trying so hard, and it doesn't really even sugarcoat like just how much they went through just to get, you know, from from Africa all the way to playing in the United States. It's like there's, oh, they can make the team here, and then they could, apply for citizenship and get jobs. But then it's like that doesn't work because everybody doesn't want to take a chance on them. Um, so then they go to the United States and try to get drafted, and even then they're still having that same, fear. Um, and it's like they're showing just how hard, even if, you weren't struggling in that, situation, just how hard it is to make a professional sports team in this way. So kudos on that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I do. It also shows, oh, this one agent who just goes above and beyond for them. Like, he really is fighting to get them something because he really wants to help them, and I guess a little bit himself too. But he certainly seems like he's looking out for them.
Mm-hmm. I think what really, like, I put it just above Cheaper by the Dozen, and I think what really, like, puts it one step above is that, like, when I first started watching it, like, I wasn't sure what to expect, but they really endear you to these characters. 90% of this film is about these characters, their struggles, how they want to do better. The whole goal is to just have a better life. And that theme is throughout the entire film. It's like they do stuff. This both of them, both of the kids train at basketball even though they didn't know if they'd be any good, even though one of them wasn't the best at first, and they kept training and training and training, still did schoolwork, still did everything, but still did it to give their parents and their family a better life. And that seems to be the message of the film, is just like, you even if things like look tough, you got to keep trying. And I feel like Cheaper by the Dozen is a good film, but I feel like Rise did a better job with its cast and with its theme, and keeping that throughout the film. Kat?
I don't know. It was tough because I'm endeared more to comedies, hence why I put Cheaper by the Dozen a little higher up. Because, like, at least with that, I can see myself maybe rewatching it one or two times in the future. Not so much this, like, not that I have anything against it. Like I said, I like this film. I think it's a very well done, very well acted film. It's just, it constantly reminds you of the somberness of what immigrants today go through in all countries, specifically the US. So it's kind of a downer to watch. And, it's like you mentioned, you're seeing this family separated because of that situation. And you see that hurdles are just thrown at them left and right. Like, I was tense the entire movie because I kept expecting at any moment agents were going to show up at their house and deport them or separate them and arrest them or something. It's hard to really fully enjoy a movie when you're on edge that entire time. It's yeah, you're rooting for him, but at the same time it's you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I mean, thankfully that doesn't happen in this, but again, it kind of takes away from the enjoyability of it. Again, I still think it's a good film. It's not something that I can calmly watch or properly enjoy just because of how somber it is.
I mean, personally, both of the films made me cry, and that was more than I can say for a lot of the films this year. And I felt like I enjoyed Rise more for what it brought to the table. Doug?
Yeah, I can't really say much else, past what you guys have said. But yeah, like Kat said, it's definitely something I'd only want to watch once. Just that puts a lot on your emotions, and it's so frustrating. But yeah, like I said, not knocking anybody's performance. Everybody did a great job with this.
I would personally want to see it more than once, but then again, I feel like it's kind of the same thing as like a horror film, in that like a lot of people are like, I'd probably want to watch it once, or it's not really my cup of tea. You either like this type of thing or you don't, and I think it's a great film, but it's not for everyone.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, next we move on to a polarizing film, Thor: Love and Thunder, or as I like to call it, Thornder. Love and Thornder. I put this at number 8.
Number 9.
I also put it at 8.
And here's my thing. I'm gonna start, and then I'm gonna let Kat do like kind of a summary, just so I can breathe a little bit because my voice is still a little bit shot. I think this is half of a good film, a little bit like Lightyear, and I put it just under Lightyear simply because I felt like the first half of Lightyear was a little bit better. But Thor, I love it personally, but on a critical level, it has so many weird decisions, and I feel like it needed another draft for its script. And I get why they did certain things, and I'm going to defend certain decisions, but it's not for everyone. Kat, why don't you take it over from here?
So yeah, this is the 4th Thor movie we've gotten, and I kind of thought that they were done telling his story in Ragnarok, but I guess there was more to tell in this. But honestly, this film exists more as like a sort of redemption for Natalie Portman, pretty much, because in this, Thor had been traveling with the Guardians, but we don't really get to see it all that much. He pretty much, parts ways from them within the first 5 minutes. He's back in shape and everything, ready to like go back home. But then it turns out Jane Porter is back, and not only that, she now has the power of Thor. So now she's Lady Thor. But then we meet Gore the God Butcher, who decides that all gods must die because the gods suck, which is understandable. So it's up to Thor and all of them to basically fight him after he decides to kidnap all the children from their village. And I can understand why this movie is very polarizing, because I know a lot of people that just do not like Jane Porter at all. And honestly, I was one of them. I think they do her more of a service in this, and that she's actually a character and not just, a love interest or anything like that. But yeah, like you said, there was a lot of choices made in this that I just don't understand, and it has a very inconsistent tone. Like, it tries to be somewhat of a comedy, like in Ragnarok, but at the same time, it tries to go more serious, with the character having cancer, but it just doesn't mesh well. And I get a lot of these are elements lifted from the comics, but yeah, this definitely needed a rewrite or two.
Here's my thing, and like, I get why it's polarizing. Hell, my partner Phil, he hates it. Really does not like the film. Says it's one of the worst. A lot of the people in the Discord hated it, but other people loved it. And it's hard for me because last year I lost a good friend, Dan, to cancer, and now Tara, unfortunately, also has cancer and is going through that. So this hits very close to home. I think a lot of us can understand what it's like to have someone who has some sort of illness, and cancer is just kind of the worst, and fuck cancer. On the other hand, the way I saw this film and why I personally enjoy it, it's like the MCU for the 2022 was all about trauma in dealing with grief. And I feel like Love and Thunder represented grief as a stage where you're not sure how to deal with it, so you try to make bad jokes to get through it. And I feel like the humor was deliberately done to try to distract from the characters dealing with these problems. Like, I personally love like the three-way love triangle between him and his weapons and stuff like that, because it was him seemingly trying to distract himself from the fact that his girlfriend had cancer. And I think it's not for everyone, and I'm going to say this right now, like, we needed more gore, and they needed to pick a tone, but I think what they were going for, personally, is that stage of grief where you're just like, you just make a bunch of random jokes, and they may not be good, but they're good for you. They kind of help you get past certain things. And, you know, I've, you know, trying to comfort Tara in this time, I've made some jokes. I've been like, all right, correct me if this is bad. I'm trying to lighten the tension, and I'm gonna say this on Facebook. But like, if this goes over a line, let me know. But it's like you're trying to cheer the person up, and it's not always the best. But like you're doing your best there. And I know Tara personally had a trouble watching the film, doesn't really like it because it hit very close to home, and a lot of reasons. So it's like, I can see both sides in this particular case, but that's why I personally like the film, because it's like, it hits this delicate balance of someone who's specifically grieving, and just like, let's lighten the tension. It's not the right time to, but we gotta lighten the tension. Kat?
Like, I get what you're saying. It does try to balance it. I just don't think it balanced it enough. Because, like you said, cancer's a very serious thing. And I know Jane is at that stage where she's, like, refusing to sort of acknowledge it. All it is, like, getting in the way of her research and stuff. But you can't ignore the fact that it's there. You can't ignore the fact that she steadily, like, looks worse the longer the film goes on. And you know that she's basically on a ticking clock by the end of it. So, like, and like you said, when you know someone, when you've experienced being with someone going through cancer, like, it's hard to, like, look at that from, like, an objective point. It's hard to look at that from a, you know, from a humorous point. Like, I had to watch as my grandmother slowly died from lung cancer. I had to watch as my uncle started off battling eye cancer, only for it to turn into liver cancer. Like, that is not an easy thing to witness, and you try to, like, be there and comfort them, but it's just, you know, the reality of this, and you just try to ignore it, but it just makes it all the more painful when, you know, they finally succumb. So, you know, seeing this film trying to make light of that, and it's like they kind of take it more serious toward the end, but I don't know, for me it just came too little too late. It just, you know, they're trying to make it this fun romp with, like, these goats just, like, you know, screaming all the time, and, you know, Thor...
Which were the worst part of the film. There was only one good goat gag, and that was in the Silent Realm, but, like, even still is bad.
Yeah, and then we're supposed to, like, see all these gods and stuff being idiots, and then we're seeing, like you said, the love triangle with Thor and his weapons and stuff. Like, that should be humorous, but it's like, at the same time, I'm like, but she has cancer and she's slowly dying.
Yeah, like it's very hard, because I'm gonna be honest. I think the best part of the film was the gods, like seeing the gods and how stupid they were, and Zeus. I love how they actually made Zeus like this complete fuck up who speaks like Greek, and it's like, that's it. You're uninvited to the orgy. That's it.
And fighting around the world.
That's probably.
Dude, Russell Crowe was perfect in this role. This is like the highlight. He's like one of the best casting choices I've ever seen, because given what we know about him and his real life persona, like, he was made to play Zeus, and I really appreciate the fact that he did a Greek accent on top of that to show that, yes, I am playing the asshole that I am, but I'm good at it, and I'm going to showcase that. Like, I'm going to play this dude bro as hard as possible, and you're going to enjoy it.
I loved him, and I loved Gore, and I think Gore was part of the problem of the film, because while he's a strength, like, he has the best opening of any MCU villain. But it sets the tone to be serious, whereas then we get a large part of it is comedy, even though we have cancer and this guy who lost his daughter and became a villain because of it, because the gods refused to help. and um, like Gore's entire thing was fantastic, but it serves to undermine a lot of the humor. So it's like I get what Phil is saying. It's just like, you want more of this guy who's like legitimately creepy, but then you have Thor making cannibal jokes about children, and it's a bit mishmashed. What do you think, Doug?
So yeah, this movie, I enjoy it. It's kind of like with Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. I enjoyed watching it, but it has a lot of glaring problems. Honestly,
Yeah, yeah.
I think I enjoyed watching Love and Thunder a little more than I did Ragnarok, just because Ragnarok has that just tonal whiplash after the first two movies of just suddenly becoming a comedy, and I know a lot of people were happy for the change, and yeah, but it felt very off. And I like Taika Waititi, but oh, I do not like Korg, or at least I didn't like him. I could tolerate him a little more in this because he wasn't quite as, mouthy. Uh, mouthy, yeah.
Giggity.
Well, I mean, like
I
he
mean,
doesn't, he's not
he.
as uh, uh, he's not here in the movie as much, and then he like basically gets broken down to just a face for most of it. Um, but yeah, the goats were highly annoying. It's like that was a lot of the problem, was that they just kind of ran a lot of jokes right into the ground, beating dead horse. Yeah.
Literally,
Um,
literally, in some
but at the
cases.
same time, when the jokes were good, they were good. Um, this one, it has this, this positive thing, I'd say, of not being attached to an ongoing storyline, at least not that we're seeing now. It feels like a nice standalone film that you could just watch. It does retroactively make the relationship between Thor and Jane better. I like, the fact that they make it so that he basically makes it so that Mjolnir will forever protect Jane. Even when it's like crumbled into pieces, it still is functional. I do like the little back and forth jokes between Mjolnir and Stormbringer and Thor. We have that nice return of the variant Loki, played by Matt Damon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Matt Damon comes
Hmm.
for another better part of the film where he's
Yeah.
in a play.
And then Melissa McCartney shows up
Uh,
as Hela.
anyway, but there are also issues like, obviously the cancer is an issue. I just last year lost my uncle to cancer, and I'd watched him for the past few years just becoming a shell of himself. So yeah, that is hard. And I also lost my godmother very early on to breast cancer. So yeah, that is very real. I know exactly how it would trigger people, or make them uncomfortable. So yeah, there is that, but I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, that it was in the comics that basically when Jane Porter becomes Thor, it is kind of killing her every time she transforms. Yeah,
Yeah, this was a plot line from the
yeah.
comics, and Tara
Mm.
knew going in that it was going to be
Mm.
about cancer. Like we knew, we just didn't know exactly how the breast cancer plot
Mm.
would go.
And I
And
also,
like I'm
yeah.
with you.
Sorry.
Go
And
on.
another really glaring issue is how they treat women in this. It's like you have Jane Porter basically weakened by cancer, and then like Tessa Thompson as Valkyrie, she basically gets sidelined for the most part, and then crippled to the point where she can't fight anymore. So it's like all she's able to do now is train the new, kids. So it's like that just felt very bad. That you're doing a disservice to the female characters in order to make Thor look good.
Not to mention, they finally bring Sif back in the movies since her appearance in Thor: The Dark World, and they chop her friggin' arm off and sideline her for the entire film. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like they keep doing that to the women characters, and that's kind of stupid, especially since like they make a joke about honorable death, and it's like, well, you're not dying in combat. I'm like, she what did she just do? I'm like she was in combat. Like just I.
If anything, your arm went to Valhalla.
But like that's the thing. I think Thor: Love and Thunder is more enjoyable than Ragnarok for me to watch. But the more you stop and sit and think about it, it's just mixed. I put it at 8 because that's like near the middle. Because the stuff that I like is really good, but it's just so inconsistent in what it sets out to do, and it's just like I love the villain. It's my favorite MCU villain, but they barely utilize him in the middle of the film, and it has some of the best cinematography, the best lighting, the best colorization, but when it comes to it, like the tone is not as colorful as it should be, and it's just like I get personally why they're doing it. It's like Gore is black, so his world is black and white. Like you're either with me or you're against me. Color theory is big in this film. Thor is all colorful. He's trying to maintain, but then like when Jane Foster, becomes regular, it's all washed out a little bit. They do a great job visually showing why the tone is the way it is. I think it needed another rewrite.
Yeah, I totally agree, because, like, there are just some glaring things, and I gotta point out this one plot point that's been bothering me for, like, the longest time. So, at the big climax, Thor is somehow able to grant his power to all the children of Asgard, who are able to use it temporarily to fight their enemies. Could he have done this the whole time? Why didn't he do it when the Avengers were fighting Thanos, or anybody else fighting Thanos, or any of the other threats that they've taken on since Ragnarok? Like, what the fuck?
It's weird because, on the one hand, I'm one of the people of the camp who thinks the scene is metal as all hell. Like, the backing song is amazing, and seeing the kids take out and, like, become gods themselves, pretty damn awesome, right? But it doesn't make sense.
I know, don't get me wrong, that's a cool-ass scene, and I love it. I love seeing the kids be all badass. That's what every Marvel fan at that age dreams of doing that. But it's like, you could do this the whole time? Like, why didn't you give it to Valkyrie? Why didn't you give it to Korg? Like, anybody else, any of your allies? Like, why did you wait till the very end and then give it to a bunch of children? Like, you could have given it to all the adults in Asgard and just friggin' stormed, like, his base and, like, destroyed his ass with lightning alone. Like, what the hell?
Also, I gotta say, like, visually, the fights in like, Gore's world, amazing. Because you have, like, it's a stark black and white, but then you have, like, the blues and stuff of Thor. Visually, fantastic. But, like, I don't like how they kind of set about going it, because it's just like, oh, we're gonna have it eventually just be up to Thor instead of having it end with 3 badasses fighting,
Yeah, it's just I get you have to have like the big one-on-one battle with the hero and the villain, but like, come on, like a little common sense here. Like the fact that they had to cripple all of like the side characters just to give Thor his moment, like that was like really forced. And I'm not saying
especially because like they keep piling and piling and piling on the trauma for Thor. I'm just like, let him have something.
I know, like, dear God, this man has lost his parents, his brother, his friend, his home, his fellow Avengers, and now his girlfriend. And, like, the only consolation prize he's really gotten so far is he gets an adopted daughter that he really had no choice in taking in. Like, really? You can't just give this man, like, an actual win? Like, give me a break here. And, like, I like that they're showing different versions of his grief and stuff, like, for instance, what was it? Sorry. Like, with Avengers, like, he was obviously at the depression point. So he's at, like, David Tennant level doctor. He's the man who regrets. And now here in Thor Love and Thunder, where he's, like, desperately trying to distract himself from all the bad shit, he's at the Matt Smith level of the doctor. He's the man who tries to forget. So I like that they're showing that different parts of that. It's just, I don't know, like, it feels like once they realized that dramatic Thor wasn't working in the first two movies, they tried to lean into comedy Thor, which worked, I think, for Ragnarok. Not so much here, especially given the amount of trauma he went through.
And it's a shame because this is probably his last performance because I believe he has dementia.
No, that's Bruce Willis.
No.
They're saying he
Chris
could theoretically get dementia, and it could be like early onset or something. He's just kind of taken some time for himself to, process the potential. Yeah,
okay.
but I don't think this is his last one. I think he's supposed to end with the the next Avengers movie.
But yeah, it's I want to like this film a lot more than I do, and personally I see a lot of it, but like this isn't for everyone. It's totally all over the place, and it's very middle of the road. Mm-hmm. You're either gonna love it or you hate it. And it just, the parts that I love outweigh the stuff that I have issues with personally.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, there is one thing I am excited about as a result of this movie.
The very last, the after credits scene.
We're getting Brett motherfucking Goldstein as Hercules. Yes, all of the yes. Roy Kent.
Zeus is not
Roy
dead.
Kent. He's there. He's there. He's fucking everywhere.
Hercules.
and Zeus may come back. Zeus was probably the best part of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, let's move on to Pinocchio. And to clarify, because apparently there were 4 Pinocchio films in 2022, we're talking about the Disney 2022 Pinocchio film, the live-action one.
Yeah, not the one that won the Oscar for Best Animated Film, which I think was completely incorrect, but, that's just my opinion. Whatever.
So, I have this at number 13.
Number 13.
Number 12.
Yeah, this wasn't good. And I knew this wasn't good going into it.
I don't get how you thought this was better than Lightyear, Doug. I do not get it.
Chippendale and Lightyear made me much angrier. I don't think I was expecting much from Pinocchio. I was not expecting it to be good, so it gets a pass for me having low expectations.
I mean, I knew going in that this was bad because I saw all the live tweets. I think it was Captain Avenger who I was watching their live tweets, and they were talking about, like, Final Fantasy. Oh my god, they turned Monstro into Sin from Final Fantasy X meets Perfect Chaos from Sonic. And I'm just like, we were having fun with that. But then I'm like, I knew I had to watch it. This was the last film that I watched for this whole thing, so I don't have to see it again because it's fresh in my mind. But it's just like, it's one of those films where just like you got to rip off the Band-Aid. You know it's gonna be bad. You got to do it. So,
I just love the fact that they waited till like the last possible moment, like Disney Plus Day, to actually announce this film and then put it on streaming. It's like they knew this was bad. They were putting it off as long as possible. They're like, we got to prevent the bad hype from building, so let's just just do it. Like, just like shoot it out and then hope for the best. Like that feels like what they did with this.
And let's be fair to the film. It's not the worst live action remake I've seen. And there are stuff that I like about it. And in fact, the stuff that they were really promoting, I think Tom Hanks is perfect as Geppetto, but he's barely in the film. And I liked Key. Was it Keegan-Michael Key as the fox?
Yes.
And he's perfect. And so it's just like, there was a part where I was watching the film, and I'm like, I have issues, but I like it. I like what they did with the Blue Fairy, and I like certain things. But then it just evolves into shit. It tricks you into thinking that it's a good movie. And it's a good visual metaphor is when Pinocchio just sees shit on the side of the road. And the film just evolves into shit. It's like, they had some perfect casting choices with Keegan-Michael Key and Tom Hanks, but they sidelined the characters for no reason, and then they missed the point on so much of it. And I watched the original Pinocchio before watching this, and I have issues with the original Pinocchio, but it's still enjoyable. It's still a good film. It's not something I'd go out of my way to watch a lot, but I would watch that again.
It's a trauma dump, but you put up with it because you dealt with it since childhood.
But here, it's like they're trying to update things, but they go about it the wrong way. Like, they have Pinocchio go to school, but they toss him out of school because school is only for real boys. And I'm like, what the fuck? and like, they have Pleasure Island, but they censor so much of Pleasure Island to the point where, like, the original Pleasure Island was all about them smoking and drinking and becoming jackasses. And here it's just like, we're going to say naughty words, but not even say a swear.
And root beer.
We're going to say, I hate you. And root beer. And oh my God, they gave a song to the coachman who's now a pirate. But the coachman pirate is apparently keeper of these otherworldly smoke monsters now.
No one coaches like Gaston. No one has something like Gaston. No one works for
they gave him a peer pressure song. The whole lesson is about peer pressure, and like they have like, oh come on, like come on,
Get it.
do it.
It's just such a weird. It's such a weird part of the film, and he's just like, no, I learned my lesson. I want to go home. And it's like, okay, they try to fix it, but instead they peer pressure him into staying. And I'm just like, you just learned your lesson from Stromboli, which is, I think, more racist in this version.
Especially when you consider he's the only Italian actor in this entire thing.
Yeah, it's weird because like I'm trying to save my opinions because we're eventually gonna cover Pinocchio. I don't know specifically when, because we're still discussing what's going to be next. But like, it's either going to be in the next block, or it's going to be the next thing we talk about. Either way, I don't want to see Pinocchio more than once. So
I don't blame you. I can't comprehend like filmmakers like total bedazzlement by Pinocchio. Like I do blame the Disney version, since when you think about it, it was like the second animated film ever made. So, you know, most filmmakers would have seen it as kids. But it's like, you look at the story and you see just how dark and dreary and depressing it is. And it's like, yeah, Disney made it more palatable as like a kid's film, but like, it's still a dark fucking film. Like, this is not a property meant for children. Yet so many directors and writers will make their own version of this. Like, there's gotta be like 10,000 different Pinocchio films out there. Like you said, 4 of them came out this year alone, one of which won an Oscar. And I'm just like, why? Just like, because Pinocchio's not even really a fairy tale. It's more like a cautionary tale, if anything, like something to scare children into behaving. So the fact that this movie is like both getting so much praise and so much hate, it's just like, why are so many people paying attention to this? It's about a freaking puppet. I've seen better films with puppet. Heck, we've seen Muppets. There's a whole franchise around that's much better than this.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing that these people have this fascination with Pinocchio, but it's like, I feel like they really missed the point with a lot of this, and Monstro just comes right out of nowhere, and they at least explain how, you know, in the original version of Pinocchio, they're randomly they look for him out to sea. It's like, no, they were on their way to Pleasure Island to find him because they saw the ticket. Okay. But then they turn Monstro into perfect chaos. And like it's a sea monster, and I'm like, okay. And then they have Pinocchio turn into a motorboat, and it's just like,
I mean,
I have a lot of issues with this.
I mean, I have two explanations as to why they did that with Monstro. One is that I guess they were trying to be closer to the dogfish monster that existed in the original tale, and I get he's supposed to be kind of like a whale, but the way he's described really feels like he's more of a sea monster. Like he actively goes out of its, like, the thing goes out of its way to actually, like, you know, destroy boats and eat people. So it is considered a bad guy in that sense. So there's that, and there's also the fact, I guess they're trying to step away from demonizing whales, since, you know, a lot of whale species today are critically endangered, and they don't want to give kids the wrong ideas. Because look at Monstro. Technically, he's an oversized sperm whale. And yes, sperm whales can be aggressive, but that's usually if you're hunting them. Like, they don't go out of their way to actively eat people. So I guess they just wanted to sort of, like, get away from that.
Yeah, and then I have a final thing to say, and I'll take it over to Doug. It just, I don't want to say too much more and spoil what we're going to get into, but at the end of the film, they basically state that Pinocchio does not become a real boy, but then in a freeze frame near the end, it shows him turning into a real boy. So it's like, they both do and don't go against the message of the film, and it's like, what the fuck?
Well, aren't they like, some say he actually became like a real boy, but, you know, we'll leave that up to you to decide.
Yeah, and then they have the freeze frame where you can tell he's becoming a real boy, and I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I feel like they kind of went like the original Little Mermaid route with that one. It's like, oh yeah, she was human, and yeah, she didn't like make the spell permanent and she died, but oh, she gained a human soul, and now she lives in heaven as a human. It's like, I guess that's what they were going for or something, but I don't know, it just did not work, and it really pissed me off.
Yeah, Doug, thoughts?
Well, like I said, this one, it didn't make me as angry as you two are. Again, my expectations were so low, I really couldn't muster a lot of anger. But I do have some anger, especially because I have finally hit the point where I'm like, enough with the Easter eggs. They're not even hidden anymore. You're focusing on them. In fact, they're very loud and obnoxious and annoying. The freaking clock scene with all the Disney characters showing up. It's like, aren't we clever? You remember all this stuff, right? We'll get this on a YouTube video where we talk about things you missed. And like, you didn't fucking miss it. It was shown right there. They took excessive, copious amounts of time to show it to you. And then there's like freaking, I like Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I love him from back in his Third Rock from the Sun days, but he's so wasted in this. I didn't really care much for his rendition of Jiminy Cricket.
He's terrifying as Jiminy Cricket. Like, I'm gonna say right now, that model is terrifying.
I didn't really care
Everything
for
else
it.
I thought looked pretty well. Like, I liked the look of the cat. I thought it looked, at least, if you're gonna go with the CGI, it at least looked like it was there. But Jiminy Cricket, no, that was terrifying.
You gotta admit, though, he did a pretty spot-on impression of Jiminy Cricket. Like, I didn't even know that was him at first. And yeah, you hear his real voice kind of peek through at times, but I thought he did a pretty good impression overall.
I don't say he did a good impression,
it's just
more that I didn't recognize that it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Because this was like his dream role. He apparently like trained for a long time with this voice, trying to perfect it. Like, you gotta give him kudos for that.
Give him that, yeah.
Here's my main issue, though, is that, like, again, the beginning of the film tricks you into thinking that it's going to be a very good adaptation. And there are little problems here and there, but, like, then it hits, like, the quarter way mark or the third of the way mark, and then it just devolves into shit. And I'm just like, what angers me the most out of this is that clearly effort was put into this to make a good product. Like, Keegan, really love, like, he made me laugh as Honest John. I love that they were trying to make things better. It's just like, but then after a while, like, every decision they made seemed to be the wrong decision. And I've seen the trailer for the live action Little Mermaid. It seems like they're taking the wrong ideas. And it's like, it's the same thing with Dumbo. They took the wrong idea of what we got wrong, what was wrong in the film. And it's like, with the live action Little Mermaid, they said, oh, well, it's like she doesn't sell her soul for a stuff or a guy. And I'm like, that's not what she wanted. She wanted to know. The Little Mermaid is about knowledge.
She wants to be part
educated
of their world.
And it's like, people don't seem to understand this, and they take the straw man opposition. It's like they fix perceived flaws, but not actual flaws. And that's part of the problem with this film. It's like they create more plot holes than they fix. And it's just like, when it comes to Stromboli, they add a new character who's so superfluous that Stromboli gets put into jail. It's like, okay, that wouldn't happen, though. It's like, what is he put into jail for?
It's like, out of all the villains in this, the only one who gets a comeuppance is the puppet master, who was just a jerk. Really? Like, I get he technically was kidnapping, but seriously, out of all the other villains in this that do horrible shit, this is the one you choose to, punish. You're not gonna try to, like, save the donkey kids from the horrible coachman. No, we're just gonna, like, pretend that didn't happen and just ignore it like the original. Okay, whatever, I guess those kids had it coming.
On that note, I will say the Paradise Island actually does look pretty nice.
It's based off Disney World.
At least, it looks...
It's enticing.
Yeah, it looks like somewhere you want to go.
But it's completely... And at least it, like, explains, okay, how is this profitable? Oh, it's just they have, like, everything else is run by evil magic creatures who sell them into slavery. What?
To be fair, in the original...
Anyway,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'll save a lot of my rants for when we cover the actual film.
Yeah, we'll save our goods material for that. I just want to end it on one thing, though, that really brings this film down to me. They did not say, on to the theater! 0 out of 10. Screw this movie.
Yeah, because he had to make a joke about Chris Pine. Wow, that's so funny.
Boo.
That's not going to age.
I actually found... I kind of found that funny, but that's because Keegan's material was really good. But still. Let's move on from this farce. We'll touch into Pinocchio's level of shit when we get into it. I'm not sure when we're going to discuss after this, but it'll either be the next thing we cover, or it'll be in a block after this. We're all tired of sequels, so I don't know.
Not the next one, though.
The next thing that we're talking about is also a sequel. Segue. Hocus Pocus 2. I have this at number 6.
Number 2.
Number 9.
So we all had differing opinions this year from a lot of things, and I'm gonna put it this way. Personally, I enjoyed Hocus Pocus 2 more than the original. But on a critical level, I just, like, looking at it, I can definitely see a lot of people's problems with it. It's one of those, you either love the original and grew up with it, and you find this as a step back, because not as much memorable characters. I mean, we did a whole podcast on this, so I don't want to delve too far into this, but, like, Hocus Pocus 2 to me is... It really ramps up the Sanderson sisters, and it's the Sanderson sisters movie, but a lot of the stuff around it is not that great. And so I think it's better than Lightyear, but it's very middle of the road critically for me. Kat?
As I mentioned in the podcast, I actually really like this film by virtue of the fact that it made me like the first film. Because as I mentioned in that podcast, I did not really care for the first Hocus Pocus. I thought it was overrated. There were a lot of 90isms about it that really irk me, even now. So that's why I'm not one of those people that, every Halloween has to watch the movie because the stuff just annoyed me too much. And I expected that in Hocus Pocus too. But instead, I got character development. I got updated jokes. They got rid of all, the dated crap and everything. And they got rid of that whole thing about the virgin too. So there was a lot of changes I really liked, and by the end of it, I actually was a little emotional, with what happened to Winifred and her sisters. And for a film to do that, for me to make me care about a film that I really did not like before, that is something. I really give this movie props. Is it perfect? No. And I get a lot of people say that it kind of takes away a lot of the bite of the first film, and that they kind of soften the sisters. They're no longer killing children, or at least you don't actively see them kill children, and that they kind of redeem themselves by having a sad backstory. I rebuke that because they don't actually turn good or anything. They just show that they care about each other more than they care about power, which to me still feels in character. It just, you understand their motives more. That doesn't necessarily redeem them. I think the bigger problem is the side casts. I didn't really care for any of them. I thought a lot of them were bland. They were hitting a lot of the same marks as the first movie. But even so, I still enjoyed it as a whole. Like I said, it takes a lot for me to like a sequel to something that I originally didn't, and have that sequel make me like the first thing.
Doug.
Yeah, I'm kind of middle of the road with this one too. Again, like we said, didn't really care much for the first film. This had some, good moments and things, and once again another Ted Lasso actress in it, Hannah Waddingham in the beginning.
Yes.
Again, wasted though, because they barely focus on her singing, which is beautiful. But on the whole, it's just kind of for me. I did like the, musical moment with the choreography, and, there's the one way or the other turning into that, chase down the road, which was pretty cool. But yeah, aside from that, I felt there were a lot of annoyances, like the Walgreens scene. Just, it wasn't really for me.
Yeah, I feel like, and again, we did a whole podcast on it, so I'm not going to dwell too much on Hocus Pocus 2, but I feel like if you grew up with it and you were a really, really big fan of it, Hocus Pocus 2 may be a disappointment, or you might be in my camp where you like it just as much for different reasons. For those who didn't grow up with it, you might find something more to like about this sequel. But it also has its own unique set of problems, and you can see it runs the gamut between all three of us, and I feel like that's the thing. It's not a perfect sequel. It's a better sequel than one that we're going to talk about next. Not next, but in 2 films. But it's certainly better than Disenchanted. I will say this much. But I feel like in certain ways it drops the ball, and it will appeal to different people. Any final thoughts before I move on?
Oh no, Bette Midler!
Justice for Billy!
I'm just that kind of makes it sting. It's like you hear that she had such a fun time, and she made that one actress, the child actress, really good. But then you hear what she was like, what her thoughts are behind the scenes about trans people, and it hurts.
Yeah, it hurts. Hashtag trans rights, especially in this trying time. But anyway, I'm going to move on to Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And I'm apparently in the minority of this. I put this at number 1.
Number 4.
6.
Now, I'm going to state my thoughts here. Angela Bassett deserves every goddamn award for her performance. I think the cinematography is the best of any Marvel film this year. I think it's brilliantly choreographed, brilliantly edited. I love Namor as the villain. And I love how it plays with your expectations. I can kind of see why some people didn't like it because of the actress for Shuri's thoughts on, she had problems with vaccines, apparently. But I didn't want to delve too much into that. This film is my number one because it hooked me from start to finish. It made me sob uncontrollably numerous different times. If you pick it apart, it's more than just an emotional film. It's a well-shot film, incredibly well acted. I did not see the twists coming. Like, there's a portion where, spoilers, major spoilers, because it's a brand new on Disney Plus, but there's a point in the film where Shuri goes to the ancestral plane, and she goes basically where the point of where she wants to see someone's death, and she thinks she's going to see either her mother, or maybe she's going to see her brother, or someone else, and surprise, it's Killmonger. And like the whole scene, it starts off, everything like looks like it's underwater, and then fire start as the throne turns, and she sees that it's like, sup cuz, and I'm like, that's just such a brilliantly handled shot. And it's like, whether or not Killmonger is manipulating her even in the afterlife, because we aren't entirely sure how the ancestral plane works. They say that it's like who you're thinking about at the time, but it could just be the previous Black Panther. But Killmonger manipulates, and it just, they do such a great job with this cast of characters that I feel for each one. I love the cinematography. I love it on a technical level. I love it on an emotional level. There are parts that I feel like are just tacked on. I feel like Riri Williams is pretty cool. I didn't know anything about Ironheart, but she's just kind of there as a MacGuffin. But that doesn't really matter to me because, like, the stuff that they do with Okoye and the rest of this cast, and again, Angela Bassett deserves all the awards for her performance. Like, have I not given everything? Like, just chills, Kat.
I agree with certain parts that you mentioned. Like, definitely, I think Angela Bassett, should have been recognized. I do believe she should have won Best Supporting Actress. Not that I'm dissing Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, the woman has worked her entire life for this moment. I'm not going to take away from that. But compare her performance in that movie to Angela Bassett's performance in this, like, there's really no comparison. Like, she gave her all. Like, she knew this was her final film. She was gonna go all in. Like, at one point, I thought she really was gonna be the main character in this, the way she's being portrayed. So, yeah, she is nothing short of amazing. Other parts, like you said, I thought the cinematography, the effects were fantastic. The action was pretty damn good. Yeah, the whole, like, way they handled, like, Chadwick Boseman's death, and by virtue of his character T'Challa, like, the whole process of grief, I thought they handled that pretty well, too. Like you said, the whole scene with Killmonger was amazing. Like, I did not expect that, and I had chills the entire time. Like, I absolutely love it. And it's a good reflection of Shuri's whole processing of her grief, because like him, like, when Killmonger's father died, he wanted to watch the world burn, which ultimately he almost did, and that's why he ended up in a part of the realm where he's cut off from everyone, surrounded by the flames of his hatred. This was basically a foreshadowing for her of what she did if she went down the same path as him. So I really appreciate, the symbolism of all of that. And like I said, it was just, everything was very well done. Everyone did a phenomenal job acting-wise, and, just being a funnel, like, I don't want to say fun, but like a sort of epicified action film. It's not as good as the first Black Panther by any means, in my opinion, but it's pretty close. But here's where I have to, I have to give my honest opinions, though. And I know I'm gonna piss off people with this. As much as I admit that this is a very well done, very well acted movie, I personally did not enjoy it for a couple of reasons. One, as you mentioned, is because of the actress who plays Shuri. Because I loved her. I loved Shuri in the first one. She was my absolute favorite. But then she had to go and say stupid shit like that on Twitter. And I know there's a big debate about whether you should separate the actor from the character. But it's impossible to do that when the character is supposed to be the smartest person in the MCU. Like,
yeah.
The smartest person who's, like, the best scientist ever. And yet a real-life actress totally decries all of that in the name of religion. Like, it is absolutely impossible for me to separate that. Like, I cannot look at this person and think, how is this person, this, like, supposed to be, like, the greatest scientist ever, but is played by someone who is so dumb? Like, you can't, like, really comprehend that. I know some people can. I personally can't. Also, another thing. I do not think she should have been Black Panther. I knew from the beginning she was going to be, because that was the only logical conclusion. Like, I know they set up other possibilities, like, the Queen could have become her, or M'Baku could have, or Okoye, or Nakia. Any of those, I think, would have been a better fit than Shuri. Like, let's be honest here. Like, Okoye should have been the new Black Panther by virtue of her fighting ability alone. Because, like, Shuri, yes, she can sort of fight. She knows how to use weaponry. She can't fight on the same level as someone from the Dora Milaje. Come on.
And, like, they seem to be, like, putting other red herrings. Like, personally, I thought they were pushing Riri Williams. But that's just because I don't read the comics. I don't know Ironheart. But, like,
I knew that wouldn't happen by virtue of knowing that Ironheart was going to happen. So there's no way that she would have been up for that if they already had her in mind for somebody else. Like, they already showed the suit. I'm like, okay, she's Ironheart. Okay, good to know.
Or
like,
just have M'Baku, because M'Baku was one of the best characters in the damn movie, advising her the whole way.
I would have been perfectly fine with that, to be honest. It's like, yeah, he was supposed to be a villain, but he turned out to be a surprise ally. And he becomes, like, sort of the comic relief. And it's like, yeah, I enjoy this guy. I wouldn't mind seeing him become Black Panther. Heck, he even fights for the honor at the end of it. Which I wish he would have fought her, because he would have whooped her ass big time, but... oh, well, you can't get everything. But at least, he'll be there. And I mean, I thought there would have been potential, too, because it's like he could have had the chance to turn a villain once he became Black Panther, to show his true colors or something, but I guess we'll never get that. But, I said,
there could be another film, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Like, I can't see a proper film for this. Like, anytime we're going to see Shuri from now on, it's probably going to be a crossover. That's what I feel. But... other things I found wrong with this, one is the length time. Get this is the second longest MCU film we've gotten behind Endgame. This is literally 20 minutes shorter than Endgame, which clocked in at 3 hours. Like, my ass was so fucking sore by the end of this. Like, the only other film that's just as long was Eternals, and that was fucking torture to sit through. And while this one was definitely better to sit through, when I notice how sore my ass is, you know that I'm not fully enjoying myself. So...
now, to be fair, I will tack on to that point. I do agree it was a little bit long. I watched it at home, though, so I could pause it. And I did pause it a couple times, because I had to stop at several different points. And I feel like I wouldn't want to see this in a theater. It's better on the home screen where you can pause it.
No, I definitely agree with that, but, that's what we do. We always see it in theaters. Doug and I definitely support going out to the theater. That's just us. But, yeah, this, like I said, this wasn't a bad watch, but it was really tough to sit through, especially by virtue of the fact that there was so much padding. Like, there are characters, they just kept throwing different people in there, and I guess and I know it's like to set up, for other stuff, like they said, they had Ironheart, we had, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who's setting up that one group. Like, I know there's other stuff that they're setting up, but at the same time, it's like, do you have to do it in this movie that is already so bloated with its own plot? Like,
yeah, you
really?
probably could have done without the agent. I liked him.
Martin Freeman.
Personally, Martin Freeman does a great job. I like his character, but, like, he's really kind of superfluous. If they had just kept him to one scene, that would have been fine, but they had to bring in the whole, oh, we're gonna bring in, he's arrested and then he goes to Wakanda, or like, just you could have condensed it, is what I'm saying.
And then the other point too, and I know you're gonna hate me for this, Zen. I did not like Namor. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not nothing against the actor. I thought he was very serviceable, and he had a great look and everything. But he's kind of like every other Marvel villain we've seen thus far, in that, he's made out to be sympathetic, but we have to have him do something extreme to justify him being the villain and having the hero fight him. Not to mention, he is both the like this weird combination of generic and OP. Cause like, what was it? The guy like got magic powers through that whole like ritual with his people, but at the same time he's also a demigod. But at the same time he's also a mutant. It's like, dude, pick your power and stick with it. It's like, cool, you can breathe underwater and fly at the same time. Like, Jesus Christ. And like, I get it's based on the comic, but still.
I get what you're saying, but Namor the Submariner was actually like this. I did watch Linkar's review of the first Namor, and when he was introduced, Namor was precisely like this. So
no, I get that. I get that they were trying to go off the comics and stuff, but I'm saying, for someone like me who knows nothing about the character, and to see like him for the first time, and again to see how fucking OP he is, like, he could have like easily killed everyone during the first raid on Wakanda if he wanted to. But of course, if that happened, we wouldn't have the plot later. So
see, Namor has constantly been classed as an anti-hero. I feel like what they're trying to do with this is, like, they make him sympathetic, yes, but they're not leaning towards him being a hero. And he's more of an ally in the Marvel Universe as a whole. And I like what they did with that. It's not going to sit well with everyone. I think he's incredibly well acted. As for being OP, he does have weaknesses. I mean, you have to, like, make sure that he's not overheated and whatnot. And I feel like it's more that he's a mutant. He's one of the first mutants, so.
Right. I'm just saying, like, he kind of has the whole Superman problem going on, in that he has all of these abilities, but it's like it's like the simplest of things that like takes him down. So it's like, oh, Superman can fly, and has super strength and speed and breathes ice and laser eyes and yada yada. Oh, but he gets taken down by a radioactive rock. And it's like with Namor, it's like, oh, he can breathe underwater, he can fly, he can fight, he can do all these things. Oh, but it's lack of water that kills him. Like,
at the same time, you could say the same thing of Green Lantern, because his powers don't work on the color yellow. So
depends on what continuity we're talking about here.
Yeah. So, like, you could pick apart any hero that way. I feel that's a little bit nitpicky, but I understand where you're coming from. Doug.
Yeah, this movie, honestly, with Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, with Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, with Thor, Love and Thunder, they all ranked right smack in the middle of my list. And honestly, I probably, if not for how they handle Chadwick Boseman's passing and, having to struggle with that, I would have ranked this film a lot lower. Because, yeah, it is far too long. Like you said, the issues with Shuri, with Letitia Jones, and her thoughts.
Isn't it Letitia
Wright? Excuse me.
Letitia Wright.
Yes. What you call it? And not only that, I mean, I wanted her to be Black Panther too, and until hearing about her views on vaccinations and things. But then even like seeing her in this movie, and I get she's suffering from the grief of losing. Wow, why am I drawing a blank on the character? T'Challa, yeah, on losing T'Challa. Not to mention that it's basically she couldn't save him, and she's going through this survivor's guilt and just feeling really down on herself the whole movie. It's like, what happened to the memeing, joking, smartass Shuri that I loved in the first movie? I'm like, I get you have to process your grief, but this I'm not watching the same character at all. This does not feel like Shuri, at least from that. Like maybe you get a couple, maudlin jokes, but yeah, it's like everybody else at least is doing a great job of, especially like I really thought, oh, what? Why am I drawing a blank on her name now? Not
Okoye?
Okoye, the queen.
Uh,
Oh. Oh, Ramona?
Mona, what's the
Ramonda?
actress? Angela
Angela
Bassett.
Bassett?
I genuinely thought that she was gonna get the Oscar, and I'm like, again, I really am happy that it was Jamie Lee Curtis that got it. It's like well earned, but I seriously thought that she knocked it out. But it just sucks they had to basically kill her off and then I don't know, but the point is she did such a great job, and Okoye, she was basically like the uh, the wit that we needed, and then like you said, I think it would have been better to make her the Black Panther instead, because she feels more like she's fitting that heroic role, and still having character to her. Boy, the things that she goes through. What you call it? Riri Williams is just clumsily added into this movie. There's no real reason to have her there other than, that we're getting her in the MCU. And I do want to see her, but this was just not how I wanted to be introduced to her. She just does not get to do much of anything. Um, this movie is entirely too long. And I managed to sit through all of Endgame without needing to go to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom at the beginning and was fine, till the very, very end when the credits were over. But this one, I had to leave. I had to leave before the credits started because I could not hold it. It was bad. And even then, I'm like, I'm kind of wanting to just leave this movie so much throughout it. Um, I don't know how I feel about the end with T'Challa's son. Uh, uh, mm, I don't know. That felt forced. A lot of stuff felt very forced. I would have also liked M'Baku to be the Black Panther. I feel that ending is awkward, where they have they're doing the fight for Black Panther, and it's just there's no real thing at stake because Shuri just went off and did her own thing. She's not showing up for it. Um, so yeah, why not have M'Baku become Black Panther or give him the opportunity? It's like that just felt so off. I'm like, this movie, and I'm like, I know a lot of people they're gonna hate that I feel this way, but I'm sorry, this film is not as good as people make it out to be.
Yeah.
I
If I'm being honest here, the only reason I put it at number 4 was because I kind of felt guilty putting it any lower, given that by virtue of how it was made, it is better in a technological sense and an acting sense than the other stuff we reviewed so far. But yeah, I won't lie, this is definitely like a guilt like selection on my part.
I I just can't agree personally. I see where you're coming from, but like for me, it was powerful. This is a very powerful movie to me. I get that there are problems, but like I there's just so much that I enjoy about this film. I think it's really well made. I think it's really well acted. Do I wish they went in different directions? Yes. I definitely it's another one of those could have used another pass at a script. It's a victim of too many films coming out in the same year. Yeah. But like it's still such a powerful, good film for me, and I just can't not love it. So that's me.
Yeah, I mean, you have every right to feel that way. I'm not gonna knock you for, feeling the way you do and liking it as much as you do. That's perfectly fine. It's just, I just want to reiterate that, as much as we tried to enjoy it, knowing everything about it going in, that just wasn't the case here. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's tough with a film like this, and I already give this film kudos for how it turned out, given how much was stacked against it. I mean, for crying out loud, its lead star died prematurely in his prime. They had to really rewrite this, because here's the thing: the whole thing with his son was supposed to be the whole plot of this. Him connecting with his son and training him to be the new Black Panther eventually. That was an established thing. They had to almost entirely scrap that because of his death and really, rewrite this thing just to make it comprehensible and fit in for what they had planned with other movies in the future. So
the fact that it came out as good as it did is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not gonna knock it for that. If anything, I praise it for that, for being able to, be this good. I definitely consider this better than other Marvel films that we've seen both this year and past, for sure. It's just, it's not something that I personally enjoy or would want to watch again. I mean, obviously we'll get to this once we get to it in the, Marvel Initiative way down the line, but it's definitely not up there on my top 10 by any means. I'm glad I saw it. I don't need to see it again. Oh, and I do want to point out one little fun bit that I did learn though. So, the actor who plays Namor, yeah, he doesn't know how to swim. he had to learn how to swim for this movie. I'm sorry, but I just find that funny. And here's the even funnier thing. They had auditioned a bunch of people for the part of Namor, and one of the people that tried out for it was Michael Phelps. How fucking hilarious would that have been?
10 out of 10, no notes.
He doesn't need wings. He's high enough.
Exactly.
Any other things before I move on?
I'd say watch this film, definitely, for sure, if only for, the performances and stuff, and to see, where the whole Black Panther franchise goes from here, but prepare to have a sore ass when you do. Definitely watch the streaming, be able to, pause it when you can, because it's definitely, it's a ride, for certain.
All right, let's move on to Disenchanted, and I'm going to put this at number 12.
Number 10.
Also number 10.
I'm going to be honest. Part of this is a personal bias. I first saw Enchanted right before this film. So I already have a bias going in because Enchanted is amazing. I was expecting to be okay on it, but the thing is, because I've seen so many parody deconstruction films of, parodies of Disney films and whatnot, It's a Wonderful Day for Pie. We've all seen deconstructions, but Enchanted is a cut above because while some parts still are a little bit awkward, oh, I just met you, now we're married. I thought that, we'll be married in the morning was a little bit forced, but so much of this is ahead of its time. Even today, and it still is relevant, and it's a film about someone who has lost the magic of the world around him, and he's taught how to see the magic in every little thing, and it's an emotional film. It does a great job of dealing with grief and loss while still being fun, and all the songs are memorable. That's how you know. The fact that she talks about, she sings and dances with cockroaches in New York and rats, even though you're vermin, This is one of my favorite Disney films. Honestly, I can't believe I didn't see it sooner. I think part of it is it was very overhyped, and a lot of people were like, oh, it's the best thing ever because it makes fun of Disney. I'm like, I don't know. I've seen a lot of Disney deconstructions, but, no, Enchanted is so good. Disenchanted was just such a huge disappointment.
Oh,
Kat,
yeah.
why don't you take over and give a brief summary?
So yeah, Disenchanted, even though in the context of the film it takes place 10 years later, you can tell this is actually 15 years later because that's the reality of the gap between this. And you can tell that this definitely went through development hell because, you know, they show this is basically what if we show what happens after Happily Ever After? Well, if that's the case, you get a really bad story because we see that sorry. We see that Giselle, Robert, Morgan have settled in together. They have a new daughter, but they find that their place is too small now, so they decide to go out in the suburbs of New York, which turned out to be a horrible fucking idea because Robert still works in the city and has to do a really long commute, and also they decide to buy a fixer-upper, even though, you know, the place is leaking sewage and, you know, has like dangerous electrical wiring. And then of course Morgan is going through her angsty teen phase where she's being a jerk and, you know, is basically like, you know, just throwing an attitude at Giselle every chance she gets. So of course Giselle, you know, realizing that she no longer has her fairy tale ending, I guess, it makes the dumb decision to make a wish on this wand that King Edward gave her to basically turn the world into a fairy tale. And yeah, that was a mistake because by virtue of her role now in this film, like, she's no longer the princess. She's now, according to Morgan, who is now the princess type, she is the evil stepmother, which is what she gradually turns into through the course of the film. But here's the thing, we have another villain in the form of the evil queen. So now it's kind of like two villains going at it, while this world is slowly sucking dry the magic of Andalasia. So yeah, there's a lot of bad shit going on in this. And by the end of it, you're just left wondering, what was the point of it all? Really?
It is like, I want to like this film because there's certain things that I think would work really well. Yvette Nicole Brown. You have her, and she's always amazing. You have two dueling villains who have a song together, and that should have been awesome. You have a lot more info about Andalasia, and you have, like, you know, growing pains and whatnot, but, like, not a lot of this amounts to anything, and I feel like it would have been better if Morgan had made the wish, because, like, the whole point was her disillusion with their move, and it's like, she feels like she's not really part of Andalasia. And, like, the whole point of this is, like, the wand only works for someone who's truly a daughter of Andalasia. So, if out of spite, like, she grabbed the wand and been like, I wish it was a fairy tale, I wish. And, you know, that would have worked better because, like, if she had turned her mother into the evil stepmother, that would have worked so much better for the deconstruction. Instead, it's just Giselle's trying to make everything right, and the father's sidelined. And we have too much going on, and it feels so much development hell. I was so disappointed. The only part that I really love is that Idina Menzel gets to sing, finally.
Finally!
And Love Power made me sob. Love Power is probably the best song out of both films. And it made me sob. But at the same time, like, that's the only part that I really liked about the film, and it's just like, this is the type of film where, you know, when you've seen a Disney deconstruction, it's the same type of thing that you expect. It's very generic, very safe. It doesn't go out of it. And yeah, they put her into various roles of, like, Beauty and the Beast and Belle, but I felt like it was just too generic compared to the original, especially because the whole point of the original was seeing the magic in everything around you, whereas here it's like, oh, well, there's just no more magic anymore. We're gonna have to go back to the fantasy world.
Yeah, this film was just such a disappointment on so many levels. I'd been wishing for years for this film, like, because this came out in a time, like, toward the end of, like, the Disney, like, early 2000s dark ages, where we had, like, nothing but shit and bad, like, straight to DVD films and stuff, and people my age were, like, in high school, college, or whatever. We were, like, almost done with Disney. So to see this film come along and like kind of, have Disney make fun of itself but do it in like a fresh new way, like this really like is among my top films for that reason. It's like, yes, it's pointing out some cliches that aren't exactly overdone as people think they are, but it's still fun, and at the same time it shows a very charming romance. It was a great movie. So I was really excited for the sequel to come along, but it took fucking forever. And I can tell why now. It's because they were trying to keep Giselle in the lead role, and she just is not meant for that in this. Like, the way the story should be, it should be Morgan who's now the focus, with Giselle being like either a mentor or like a mentor gone wrong or something like that. But they don't have the guts to go through with that because, Amy Adams is like their big headliner. They need to get people to watch this because of her. And they can't have a Disney princess suddenly turning evil because that's bad for some reason. But it's like, oh, we have to, like, take the evil away from her, so let's get this other villain. Like, honestly, here's the thing. I love Maya Rudolph, but she felt completely unnecessary to this. She only exists to take away the clearly evil role that was designed for Giselle. Like, because she becomes too friggin' evil in this. Like, I can understand her being a soccer mom who gets drunk on power and stuff, but toward the end of it, she is actively trying to kill people. She is threatening the death of her entire world along with Andalasia just to keep her power. I'm like, no. Like, I get it, the world is influencing them to be exaggerated versions of themselves, but that doesn't make it that clear. Like, you don't see anyone who's, like, obviously being brainwashed. It's not like WandaVision. Like, that's what this basically is, WandaVision. But this doesn't go as hard. Because you can't tell that they're being brainwashed. If anything, it feels like, they're just living their everyday lives. It's like with her, it's like, oh, was she always this evil? Did she always intend to do this? Like,
we don't really see her being evil in the real world before the wish, so it's like...
Yeah, but it's like, even then, it's not like, you see her eyes glowing with evil, or, she's struggling to go against her inner evil, or, she's doing something to enhance her power. She's acting normal. It's just like, oh yeah, I was always this evil. But then once things go back to normal, she's like, oh, sorry, I just wasn't myself. Like, sorry about the whole murder thing. Like, it's just like, it's like, if you're gonna go hard or go home. Like there's so many decisions they should have made different, but of course they won't do that because then, it wouldn't be as kid-friendly. It'd be too scary, too real. And they just weren't ready to go that length with this movie. It's like, such missed opportunities.
It is such a disappointment, especially because Enchanted is so good. Doug.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of enjoyed the first movie. I definitely liked, the, making fun of a lot of the tropes and things. I was very on the fence about whether a sequel would be necessary, and this certainly proved that it was not necessary. There were choices here that were very confusing. A lot of stuff they're just like trying to build up in the background, and it becomes that they have way too much going on and they don't know what the hell to do with it until it just builds and becomes one of those freaking tropes again where, in like Alice Through the Looking Glass or the remake of Beauty and the Beast where, it's like they're trying desperately to avoid the thing, but then the thing happens. But somehow, after it happens, something comes in and undoes it. Oh yeah, and Raya too. Raya did that. And I'm so tired of that. Like Kat said, it's like Maya Rudolph's kind of wasted in this. I did kind of enjoy the banter between her and Giselle when they're having their evil off. And it is kind of hard to watch, that Giselle really wants to be a good stepmother, but she's being forced into the villain role against her will. I almost really thought that they should have just stuck with that and just taken it as far as it would go to the point of her just completely losing her original personality, overtaking Maya Rudolph and becoming the evil, the final, boss, basically, that would need to be defeated. But because of that, they can't go that hard. They wound up making her weak against Maya Rudolph in that final showdown, and it just it felt so disappointing. And then, yeah.
Also, their song together is some of the worst shit ever. Like, you have two dueling villains who are singing a song together, and yet it's just so awful.
It just ultimately becomes the most forgettable product. Like, I can't remember most of the things that happen in this film. I can't remember many of the characters, if there are many. I don't know what happens. It's like, and they all just when the spell happens, everybody just kind of rolls with it. I get that it's kind of changed their minds a bit, but you would think some people would kind of be like, "Wait, what's going on now? Why do I know this?"
That's what I was saying, is that, they try to pull a WandaVision by having all these innocent people, like, be brainwashed, but you can't tell it because they act like they're living their everyday lives. Like, the closest we ever get is Morgan, when she gets thrown into Andalasia, she's like, oh, what happened? But, otherwise, everyone else, like, they don't seem to realize that. Heck, even Robert, he's off being, like, the typical prince and stuff, but he kind of reverts back to his normal self by the end without any, like, jarring revelations or, like, snap back to reality or anything. It's like, business as usual. It's like, what the hell? You couldn't, like, have the side people, like, act a little bit like they were being brainwashed? Really? And also, something else I wanted to point out, I don't like how mean-spirited this movie is in regards to step-parents. Like, I get that's a big trope, both in Disney and in fairy tales, that, the evil stepmother archetype. And this was their way of sort of deconstructing it, like, what happens when the Disney princess becomes the evil stepmother or whatever. But it's like, leading up to it, like, they make Morgan so mean and cruel for no reason. Like, I get she's a teenager, she's rebelling and whatever, but, like, when her father yells at her for, like, ditching school and going all the way to the city just to, like, see her friends or whatever, he, like, says, like, oh, she's my stepmother, not my mother, even though she never knew her mother, and Giselle's literally been the only maternal figure in her life. Like, that is...
She called her mother in the first film.
I know, she calls her mom up until that point, but then she's like, oh, she's my stepmother. I'm like, don't you dare pull that. Like, seriously, don't you ever pull that. Like, that is such a nasty thing to do and say to someone.
That's a Man of Steel level insult. Like, Man of Steel did the same thing. It's like, that's not something, like, teenagers would say it, but then say sorry at least. But no, like, she doesn't take it back or say sorry at all. It's like, no.
Like, I get it if she already had a mother, in which case, yes, Giselle is firmly the stepmother in this case. But Giselle is the only mother she's really had because her original mother abandoned her. So for her to pull this makes no sense. And me personally, like, I have two step-parents. I have a stepfather and a stepmother. And granted, I have not always agreed with them. But I had never, in any, like, no matter how angry I got or whatever, yelled at them like, oh, you're just my stepdad, or you're just my stepmom. I don't have to listen to you. Because, like, I don't do that. You never do that. That is such an insanely thing... Sorry. That is an insanely cruel thing to do, especially to the person that helped raise you.
Yeah, I can see it in the heat of passion, but being a teenager, I know that I would immediately apologize, or at least apologize a little bit later when I wasn't angry. Like, there's just... they had to completely destroy Morgan's character to get her to this point, and it's like, you didn't have to go this route. Any other thoughts before I move on?
This is the equivalent of careful what you wish for. It's like, I wanted a sequel, but I got this. And this is not worth it. Like, you'd gain nothing, you lose nothing, but it's not a fun thing to sit through. It's just there. But it's just made so much worse because it's a sequel to something that I like. And that's why it like, honestly, out of all the shitty sequels we've seen this year, this to me by far is the shittiest.
Yeah, this is like, it didn't have to be this way. And it's like, it's in my bottom three. Like, Chip and Dale is the bottom, then there's Pinocchio, and then there's Disenchanted. So one's a bad original movie, one's a bad remake, and one's a bad sequel, and it perfectly encapsulates exactly what's going on with, like, a lot of the bad films this year. It's just, they bloated it, and they didn't take the time to make these things good, and it just, it really makes me angry.
And also, almost no James Marsden. What the hell? Like, Prince Edward was one of the big highlights of the first movie, and he's barely in this one. I get, like, he was doing 2 other films at the time, so he was very, like, limited on how much he could be in the movie, but still, like, how do you sideline one of the best characters? That's bullshit.
They sidelined 2 of the best characters, because I like the dad, and his whole thing is just off on a quest. And they do nothing with him.
Basically make him the comic relief.
They waste him. Okay, so Disenchanted is very disenchanting. Now we're talking about Strange World. I'm going to say my piece about where I have it, and then I'll let you talk. But I wanna say something after this. So I had Strange World at number 10.
Number 3.
Number 2.
I had major problems with Strange World. And I liked the direction that they were trying to go in. I liked the theming. I liked, certain things. But there are certain things that I had issues with. I don't like the twist of this movie. Spoilers, but Strange World is another generational trauma movie like Turning Red, about a family of explorers, and the grandfather is all about exploring, and he's kind of stupid, and then the father is a sciencey, farmy type and just wants to not explore, and then you have the son who does want to explore, but in his own way. And the twist of this film is that they live on the back of a giant. No. I have so many scientific problems with this, because blood doesn't work that way. They show how, like, the things that they were fighting were, like, antibodies, but then how do they breathe, and how do they do any of this stuff? So that, like, I didn't like that at all. But I didn't like Strange World because it felt so generic to me, but also because it didn't really have anything to say, and it creates a gay character only to not do anything with it even more than Lightyear. And I'm just like, you have this character that he's flirting with, and they bring him up a little bit, but the gay character is not a character in the film. At least Lightyear had them be in the film. And I'm sorry, Strange World was so generic. Strange World was so bland. And Strange World was a tease in so many ways. It doesn't understand science. It sidelines the characters that I want to see. And I didn't like the grandfather at all. I thought he was the stupidest shit. So I'm sorry, I did not like this film. And I put it above some of the others because, at least parts of it were enjoyable, and visually it's great. But I just did not care for this film. Kat?
Yeah, so again, we have very, very polarizing opinions about this. Like, I will say initially, I put this at my top because it was better than a lot of the shit that we've had to watch last year. And also, because I was determined to give this a chance given how hard Disney shafted this. Because not only did they do a shit job in promoting it, like, I honestly thought this was a DreamWorks film based on how it was designed. But, like they said, they did not do a good job promoting it. They actually did not promote it in certain theaters in certain countries. Like, there are 20 countries that they refused to air it in because they had issues, I guess, or problems with theaters or whatever trying to capitalize more money off of it or something, but also because they had to advertise fully they had to advertise, like, first and foremost that it had a gay character in it. I normally don't find that a bad thing, but it's bad when you do that before the movie even gets out, because that means automatically there are countries out there that are going to ban it because they're stupid. So already, like, because this thing became a box office bomb because of how they handled the promotion of this. Not only that, like, this should have been a fun romp, like a fun adventure film. Like, they were basing this off of, like, properties like, Indiana Jones, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Fantastic Voyage, Jurassic Park, King Kong. Like, this could have been a fun adventure film and stuff. But then they had to, like, they kind of, like, I don't know what it was. Like, on the one hand, I sort of like the whole thing with the generational trauma. Like, yes, it's sort of becoming overused. Like, so even this is, like, the third or fourth property to do it. But, like, in this case, they're showing it with guys. And you could argue that generational trauma with guys is a lot different than how it is with girls. Because, men are expected to act macho. And when they don't, that causes big issues. And you have, like, 3 generations here that all are extremely different, both in, like, how they approach things as well as personality. So I thought that was, like, a fascinating aspect. But to me, it's like they couldn't balance that with the adventure aspect of the film. So it felt, like, kind of, like, jarring in a way. It's like, I want to see the fun adventure here, but at the same time, we're dealing with family problems. It's like, pick a direction here. And I feel like they could have done more characterization-wise, but they just opted not to. Like, we could have had, like, better characters, like, more memorable characters, and, I like how they did the world and everything. Like, I get it's not scientifically appropriate to the insides of a giant turtle, but to me, that's not what this movie was supposed to be about. Like, because, like, this was just about the adventure. This wasn't about the scientific, accuracy of everything. Like, if anything, the whole thing about a civilization on the back of a giant turtle, that is as old as, like, a mythology itself. Like, there are literally a ton of, like, mythological, like,
I mean, I would have liked it more if they, like, I don't know, it just, I get what they're trying to do. It's like, oh yeah, if this was Dr. Seuss, I'd be fine with it, like, because... But the whole thing was set up to be science-y. They go hard for the science of the electrical plant and everything like that. The twist was the nasty cherry on top of a bland generic. There's no character that I enjoyed. Like, I didn't dislike them, but it was just so generic to me.
I mean, I will admit they're all very flawed. That's for certain. You have the dad that's your archetype, that's your typical, like, macho man. Like, he's basically like Jonas Venture and stuff. And his son is basically Rusty Venture. Definitely reluctant, doesn't want to go on adventures and stuff. And, because he doesn't want the same thing for his son, he overcompensates and, prevents him from actually doing what he wants. And then the kid is, like, overzealous to the point of being stupid. I get it. Like, they stick with those archetypes. And it kind of takes away from it, but at the same time, they're trying to do what they can. Like, I at least, like, am more endeared to these characters than to any characters, let's say, in, like, Better Nate Than Ever. Like, that's for certain. Or in the Chip and Dale's Rescue Ranger movie. Like, I definitely like these characters more than I liked those characters. I just feel like they had a good idea, they tried to build on it, they tried to incorporate popular aspects, but it just didn't work. And by the time they saw the product as a whole, they realized that, this isn't going to make the money they thought they would, so they kind of did not make the effort to promote it in a way that would have gotten the money, hence why this ended up being a failure. But again, I still think this is better than a lot of the stuff we've seen this year. And, like I said, the whole thing with the turtle, yes, I saw it coming from a mile away. I don't really, am not offended by it, though, because, again, that's like putting logic into Indiana Jones. It's like, yeah, you can say that, it doesn't make sense that the Ark would, kill them with the light of God, but it's like, it's not supposed to make sense. Like, this isn't overall a scientific movie. This is an adventure film. Adventure films has some pretty fucking ridiculous stuff in this. Look at the Fast and the Furious movies. Like, you've seen them. You've reviewed them. You've seen the batshit stuff that goes on that makes no sense.
At the same time, I feel like one of the big failings of Strange World is that it is so predictable with how it was going to go. From the very beginning, like, they play up like, oh, you're not supposed to harm stuff. What kind of game is it where you don't harm stuff? And I predicted that the stuff they were fighting, oh, they're probably going to be good. And I was right. I just felt like I've seen this so many times. I'm sorry. I've seen it where, like, you think one thing and it's just like, no, we have to make peace with nature. Even if it was scientifically accurate, I wouldn't enjoy it, if that makes sense.
I guess. I don't know. I guess it just... Because by virtue of this being a Disney film, I was just already prepared to suspend my disbelief. Because, like, it's called Strange World. I expected to have some sort of alien-like properties or some mystical-like properties. So, the whole them being inside a giant turtle, like, it didn't really faze me. Like, because I've seen much weirder shit, trust me. I think the whole problem is that this film, like... the problem is this film and the Wakanda film both came out around the same time the Avatar sequel did. So I kind of was thinking of that movie the entire time.
The other problem is the marketing, and I'm going to be completely honest. A major problem I have is the marketing made me think that this was taking place on another world. Because it's Strange World, and I thought it was like Lightyear, but with a different planet. And I was prepared for that. But no, it just, like, they go underneath and they find a Strange World, and it was just so weird to me. I don't know. There's something about it that threw me off. We haven't let Doug speak, though. Doug, do you have anything to say?
I'm going to speak now, and I'm going to take up the whole rest of the thing, and you're going to be like, oh, man, why did we talk so much? This, honestly... I probably wouldn't rank this movie so high if not for the fact that this year was such a low bar for films with Disney. But this one, like, I remember seeing the trailers for it, and like you said, it did feel like, oh, this is take place on another world, on another planet, and it's like, okay, cool. I kind of like what they're throwing here. They're doing like this B movie trailer sort of thing for it. I'm digging it. And then like you start when it comes out and you start getting all the negative press and Disney, people are starting to like point the fingers at oh, Disney did another gay character, so that's why this movie sucks. And then we go and see it, and we're like, I don't really, aside from, the gay character being a point of contention for people, I don't see what the problem is. And then you get to the twist, and you're like, that's why Disney wants to bury this, because the oil companies and everything are probably giving them shit about it because of the environmental message. Yeah, and that was very heavy-handed. But that aside, I did enjoy it. I did like the pulp adventure feeling in a subterranean looking area. I love how they basically make the innards of this creature look like something not of this world, that you wouldn't immediately think that it's the innards of a creature. I do enjoy, like Kat said, about the addressing the generational trauma of male characters of the three generations. Seeing, the butch, toxic masculinity of the father and him being, this big-time famous adventurer who, got so much accolades and stuff, but he's actually kind of an asshole. And he just, like, decides to leave them all at the beginning. It's like, wow, that wasn't... You have the overly cautious son who got famous too, and he's got, family that he actually loves and is close with, but he's afraid when his father comes into the picture, he wants to protect his son so that his son does not become the grandfather. Um, and there are some genuine quiet moments where you see them, kind of bonding. And you see them bonding over the game, which, yeah, that made no sense, and there's some stupid thing, but I enjoyed that the grandfather was actually willing to sit down and just play a game that he didn't even really understand, just to spend time with his family. That I liked that. I liked the whole look of the film, and some of the creatures. A lot of the other characters, yeah, they're kind of wasted, and we get a little queer baiting with, yeah, actually making the son gay and actually delivering on it. But it's again one of those times where they could just easily edit that stuff out in when they send it overseas. So it's like, well, we got it, but we didn't really get it. So I don't know. I have very mixed feelings, but I walked out of the film feeling a surprising amount of enjoyment, given all the negativity that was surrounding this movie, that I can't help but put it a little higher on my scale.
I see where you're coming from, both of you. Don't get me wrong. I do acknowledge that there are good parts to the film, and there were stuff that got me. I don't know. I felt like I was on autopilot watching this film, and I went in expecting one thing, and they bait and switched me. The marketing was a major problem. A lot of the way they set up the film was a major problem. I do like the Pulp Fiction. I do like that. I don't really like a lot of the characters. I like Splat, I think his name was.
Yeah.
But, like, there's a lot of stuff that I'm just like, it feels like Fern Gully or Dances with Wolves or
Avatar.
Avatar. It definitely felt a lot like Avatar. It's just, let's go to this strange world, and the things that are trying to kill us are really trying to save us. I'm like, I get it. I am sorry. I've seen this done to death. This is what I thought Enchanted would be, where I've seen this so many times, and it doesn't really add much that I like. So I'm sorry, it doesn't do much for me. I put it just under Hollywood Stargirl, because at least Hollywood Stargirl I found a lot more parts endearing, even if their wardrobe is tacky and I hate them. Any other final thoughts before I say my piece and we can wrap this up?
I still think Disney did this dirty. And again, this is like one of the few original like plot films we've gotten this year. Like, because I kind of made a mistake before by saying that it was just Turning Red and Chip and Dale. But yeah, this... No, sorry, better Nate than ever. But even then, it's like, I felt like this could have had potential. They just didn't bother after a certain point. And it's like... They probably either should have just put this straight to streaming, or they should have just waited until they had a better script. Either way, this film definitely was done dirty.
I can definitely agree with that. It needed better marketing. It needed to have more confidence. It needed a rewrite. It needed less generic Avatar-ness. With that being said, you know what? I'll give it a pass because Sonic is dead. I don't know if you've seen this, but apparently they put out, Sonic Team put out a game called The Murder of Sonic for April Fools. It is a free game. It's a visual novel murder mystery. So, like, you know what? Free pass, Sonic is dead. In any case, this year was a lot. 2022 was so much. Like, there weren't a lot of films that I really enjoyed. And looking at my top, it's like, even those were polarizing in a lot of ways for a lot of us. And I can see a lot of this list just being stuff that people didn't like. And it's just like, yeah, I get it. This was a rough year. And part of the reason why it took us so long to make this and go through, it's like, we're sick of shit. Okay? You know, we're sick of looking at the shit on the side of the road that is Pinocchio. And and just I'm tired of it. So we're going to talk after this and decide what we're going to do next. It's either going to be Pinocchio to get it out of the way, or it's going to be Nicky, Wild Dog of the North, which is the next film in the lineup that we've been pushing off for a while. It'll be one of those two things. Either way, I hope to see you guys next time for something hopefully more enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed this. We're trying not to be so over the top angry, but like it's just this was a rough year. In any case, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess.
I'm Kat McBerry.
I don't need 3 Marvel films a year anymore. I think we can go back to just one. It was cool when we were doing the Infinity Saga, and we kind of were, excited to get to the next thing. But now we're in a lull, and superhero movies are becoming a little oversaturated, and we're just getting tired. Excuse me. I'm Doug McBerry.
That's a long title. In any case, just remember, watch something good this year. Any final thoughts, Kat?
Yeah, like I said, this was a rough year. I get a lot of these projects were were mostly put off due to the pandemic and a lot of other factors, but it's clear that a change of direction is needed. I'm kind of glad Bob Iger is back in that sense. So hopefully we get more streamlined stuff, we get more high quality stuff next year. At any rate, this is definitely going to be a shorter list next year for certain. Like, we are definitely capping it off. So, I look forward to seeing what Disney has in store, and, here's hoping that the live-action stuff doesn't turn out as bad as we think it's going to. So, here's hoping.
And Doug, any final thoughts?
Disney, grow some balls. We're getting tired of the queer baiting, or, the things that they could go hard, and then you wind up getting a mediocre or terrible product because Disney just wasn't they didn't feel safe going there. But it was a frustrating year, and we got very, very mediocre results. So I'm hoping with the change in administration that things will change a little bit, or at least we'll get less crap.
Yeah. Without Chapek and without Ike Perlmutter, I believe, we're gonna do hopefully better. But anyway, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of Ghost Buns, saying just remember, demand better, because even things you love can strive to do better and shouldn't fall in a rut of quantity over quality.
To quote Miss Frizzle, take chances, make mistakes, and get messy.
And have a good one, everybody.
Night.
Watch out for giant turtles or whatever.